So I'm here at Fir Tree Farm meadows. What a fantastic place to be. There must be millions of flowers here, and I can hear insects humming in the background. And it's just a real success story. The National Trust acquired the meadows about 4 years ago, and since then they've been managed as hay meadows, which means that the grazing's taken off in early spring. The flowers are allowed to bloom and set seed throughout the summer, and then it's cut in late summer, and that's taken off as a hay crop. In addition to that, there's been a little bit of intervention. Volunteers have sown yellow rattle, we'll talk about that in a minute, and also a few plug plants of species characteristic of meadows like this one have been planted. In addition to that, over the winter, volunteers have done an awful lot of tree planting work, and we'll go and take a look at what they've been up to. So what you can see here over my shoulder are lots of saplings of scrubby species, things like blackthorn, hawthorn, holly, a few other things in the mix as well, but mainly those thorny scrubby species. And what we're trying to do here is create wide corridors of scrubby woodland. Not your traditional hedgerows. We're lucky here that we've got the space to have a play and to create these wide corridors for habitat connectivity. Gives you a sense of how wide these corridors are between the fence and the existing hedgerow. The fence is there to protect the tree saplings from grazing animals when the field is grazed over winter. So absolutely great habitat for birds, things like whitethroats, blackcaps, wrens, things like that, and just it'll really enhance the habitat that we've got here at Fir Tree Farm and just add another habitat into the mix. So you can see behind me here we've got a little bit of a different approach on this boundary. We've really done a more traditional hedge, so a double row of hedge whips, and the species mix is a little bit more varied. So we've still got things like hawthorn and blackthorn, but we've got an awful lot of hazel in there, some hollies, dog rose, a few field maple, dogwood, so really quite varied, but all traditional hedgerow species, including one of my favourites, which is the spindle. So yeah, fantastic berries in winter, just a great colour and a great species to have in the mix. So this planting was all done over the winter using volunteers, including some corporate groups. So we had our traditional stepping stones volunteers who did a fantastic job, but also quite a few corporate groups coming out to help us as well, which was great. So every now and then along the hedge line we've dotted some oak trees, and the idea is that these won't really be part of the hedge. They'll be left uncut to grow up and become standard trees dotted along that hedgerow. So you can see they're slightly bigger than the other hedge whips surrounding them to give them a head start. And we've got about 10 oak trees along every field boundary. So we really hope that these may become the veteran oaks of the future and will be the natural successors to the fantastic oak tree that currently stands in the middle of the meadow. So I'm lying in the meadow amongst all the flowers, and one in particular is very prevalent here. It's this flower here called yellow rattle. It's all around me, and this is so important in meadow restoration. It's often called the meadow maker. The reason being that it's semi-parasitic on grasses, so essentially it suppresses the dominance of those coarse grasses and allows the wildflowers and finer grasses chance to get a foothold. And this was actually sown by volunteers over the last few years, out here with buckets of seed, chucking it around, and it's all come up absolutely brilliantly. The meadow is full of yellow rattle, and it's a great source of food for insects in its own right as well. There's lots of bees that I've noticed feeding on the yellow rattle. Another technique which we've used to try and increase the species diversity of the meadow is the application of green hay. Now, green hay is a great way of transferring seeds from a species-rich donor meadow to a less species-rich site where we're trying to increase the number of flowers and grasses. So Basically, it's quite a simple technique, really. The hay is cut from the donor meadow, and very quickly on the same day is transported to the recipient meadow, and it's spread around. And as that hay dries, the seeds that it contains will drop out, and hopefully some of them will germinate in the new meadow. So obviously, it's a good way of transferring seed locally, because it has to be done so quickly. It has to be done locally, ideally, and it's always best to try and keep local species in your meadow as well, because well, they're what would be here, and they're also adapted to the local conditions. So green hay was spread here last year, thanks to the March's Meadow group, and it's really exciting to wait and see what's going to come up in future years.